almost every company has at least one dashboard that if you said, oh, that's going around the internet as an open URL, would make the leadership team sweat and maybe even lose their jobs.
So at ScreenCloud, we like to think of ourselves as, one of our values actually is about being brave and unconventional, but not brave and unconventional just for the sake of being brave and unconventional. When it comes to product, it's specifically where we think we're doing something that's truly solving a problem for a customer. It might be unconventional because no one's really thought about it before. So we just wanted to talk a little bit about that today. And actually, when we first started ScreenCloud, in many ways, it's quite a good example. We came into an industry that was largely, I think it'd be fair to say, largely focused on the hardware, with software as a bit of an afterthought. Is a bit unfair, but it was a hardware focused kind of industry. And we came in thinking, well, actually, look, the way we see it is that we can provide some really, really powerful software that can use some of the other media players that are already out there, that people are already using for other things like showing TV. So it could be, you could show digital signage on a Fire TV stick or something like that, right up to showing TV on an Apple Mac or something like that. So we were kind of coming at it from a slightly different way, but critically, because we saw an opportunity and a problem that we could solve by being unconventional. And obviously now lots of people are doing the same thing that we're doing, and it's not that unusual anymore. But we're working on something at the moment. We're about to launch. We're in the process of launching a new feature for ScreenCloud called ScreenCloud Dashboards. We wanted to talk a little bit about that, specifically what it is. Firstly, how it's different to the way the rest of the industry is approaching this thing, but most critically, why? Why did we choose to do that? Why did we decide that there was a better way, a different way of doing it? What was the problem that we were really trying to solve? So, okay, without further ado, we'll kick off. Mark, do you want to explain what ScreenCloud Dashboards is, fundamentally?
Yes, so ScreenCloud Dashboards is a secure method for rendering dashboards that live typically behind a login on a screen, which sounds simple, but isn't simple. And one of the kind of big requirements of screens that are internally facing screens typically, so screens facing your own teams, your own employees, is that they want to see data. They want to see data. Data rules the world. And if you look at the last decade in software, one of the enormous growing segments in that time has been business intelligence. So you've seen new up-and-coming companies grow to become massive and get acquired. In the case of Looker being bought by Google, or Tableau being bought by Salesforce for I think 16 billion, something like that. Datadog, which floated and is now one of the sort of going up there on the stock exchange in New York, and it's not just about there's a reason why they got massive, and that's because every company, I think in the last probably 10 to 15 years, I think every company realized that, I'm sure they were always running, data analysis. Inevitably, every company would have been doing that. But I think what they realized was actually that data, rather than being looked at on a, bi-weekly, monthly, or even quarterly cadence, was something that they wanted to see in real time, or at least every day. And that now their other solutions, that run the business, were all connected, and as a result could pump out data. You have to bear in mind that 20 years ago this just wasn't possible. So you wouldn't even be having a discussion about dashboards, because you'd have to probably go and mine the data, download zip files, upload it into some tool, maybe do analysis in Excel. It was a process. And now, as you hook up all of your various systems to a dashboard, that process is real time or close to it, and you don't need an army of analysts to work on it. And therefore, that's freed up the data to come and live in the real world. And the best way for it to live in the real world, unless it's with people who literally for a job, their job is to go in, log in and look at them, is to put them out publicly. And the best way to do that is to put it on a screen. So we're at the end of this food chain. We can't take any credit for what's happened in the last 10, 15 years in terms of business intelligence. But what we can do is surf the wave. And that's what typically ScreenCloud has always done. You talked about the first wave, which was taking consumer hardware, brand new consumer hardware at the time, Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire TV, like we built on top of that the year it was launched, and said, you know what, look at the spec. This stuff is just fine for many, many use cases. Not for every use case, but for many that weren't being served. And I think that the dashboards is the next wave that we're looking at. So the demand for this was coming from customers pretty much ever since we started to support just URLs in the platform. So people were saying, okay, this is great. I can put web pages on a screen. I'd like that to be a dashboard. What are my options? And at the original time, the option was that most dashboards give you platforms give you the option to publish a URL in like a really random string that's like view only on the internet. But the thing is, if you're really putting out your kind of key KPIs, I mean, these are your crown jewels of the business. This is the health report of the business. That's just not going to pass muster when you go to security review and IT review. And so there needed to be a better way. The other option that we looked at is you go, okay, I need to build a dashboard creator tool, right? That's a kind of obvious one where you give me the data and inside ScreenCloud, you'll be able to author and create dashboards. Now, the problem is you kind of already built all those dashboards. They exist in the tool you already use. And the people that build dashboards, they're used to those tools. So why do they want to go and learn a new one? And then it all gets out of sync if you've got the one, oh, that's the screen version, but this is the one we get from our own reports. It just doesn't really work. And you'd end up having to build a million different feeds, and it's just it's a bit clunky. So the next thing we looked at was, sorry, one of my neighbors is drilling. Isn't that great? I don't know if you can hear that, but there we go.
It sounded like they were maybe chopping a tree down or something.
Yeah, it's something like that. Yeah, of course. It's basically silent until we record a podcast. That's really annoying. Anyway, there we go. That's like,
it's not too
no,
bad.
It's quite loud for me. But, anyway, there we go. So it's like being at the dentist and trying to explain something complicated whilst they drill. So the next place we went with this is like podcast gold. Right. The next place we went with this was thinking, okay, well, let's do individual apps for each type of dashboard. And like try and actually build native integrations with each one, which for something like Microsoft Power BI is actually quite doable because they sort of set themselves up for that. But most of the other ones just hadn't really done it that way. And then you end up supporting hundreds and hundreds of different kind of ways of doing it. So the technical thing we had to challenge here was, how do we build something that gives people the flexibility that they require, but is robust enough to service, potentially hundreds or even maybe thousands of different things? Because almost every big company I know, they don't use one dashboard tool. They use several. And normally in the mix is some random dashboard tool, either from years ago or very, very niche, or one they built themselves and runs internally. And so it's never clean. It's like most things in technology, when you work with big companies, the requirements are never clean. And I think that one of the principles that, this is really a principle that Luke adopted when we went back to our full platform rebuild, was don't try and have all the answers, just have the flexibility that allows all of the answers to occur. So rather than say, oh, we've got a button for that, we've got a feature for that, because that's where you get extremely bloated and frankly, very, very fragile technology. If you try and have a native, perfect solution to every single thing, that's the wrong way round, right? In IT, you want to say, we have the flexibility to fit your needs. Now, it's not as neat as saying, oh, yeah, there's a button, just click that and it's done. Now, in some cases, you just need a button, right? On the very, very common things. But actually what you'll find with most sophisticated IT customers is we have a way we can make that work with you. And here's like an open way in which we can do that. Let's work together on it. As you find that that's probably how most things are done. And if you look at huge enterprise software, things like Salesforce, or back in the day when I did Siebel stuff and things like that, you never bought that software without an integrator, without either in-house integrator, third-party integrators, consultants, configuration. The half of the investment, if not more sometimes, was in getting this to work, not necessarily in the licenses that you were actually purchasing. Right, there's a very long monologue.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? Because there is that balance between, as you say, we didn't want to be an authoring tool. We didn't want to say, hey, if you want to show sales data, use our sales data dashboard tool kind of thing. But at the same time, going out and creating a specific app for each and every single and the key thing, as you say, is like, it's not even like, obviously you can do those for the key ones, Tableau, Grafana, whatever, but what happens when people have built their own bespoke things, or they're using something that's a little bit left field, or even something that suddenly comes on and you're like, oh man, we've got to scramble and have something ready for this. So I suppose one of the questions then is like, what was the industry doing to resolve this, and why was that not acceptable to us, or why was that not good enough for us? Because often the way you solve these problems is to say, okay, well, what is the industry generally doing to solve these problems? And you look at that and go, well, can we do that, or should we do it slightly differently? And we kind of opted to do something fairly radically different to what everyone else is doing to solve this.
Well, so I suppose it would be fair to say that a couple of years back, the industry wasn't doing very much to solve this, from what I could tell. I mean, that was certainly feedback from customers. I mean, I don't go and index the apps of like competition. I'm aware of it. I know broadly what they do. I don't obsess about it. Don't think anyone really should in our position. Run your own race. But what we were hearing was that people just hadn't cracked it properly, and it was all quite workaroundy, or some people were doing some authentication, but it was very simple authentication, just like username, password. The problem is that the authentication industry itself has somewhat evolved in the last 10 years as well. And, just username, email, password, that isn't how a lot of authentication is done anymore. A lot of authentication systems also check for bots and attacks, which again, a system like this could look like a bot or an attack. They use two-factor authentication. They use SSO, single sign-on. So just even getting into these systems, that is a moving object, and that is not straightforward. And we're not trying to work around it. So most of the solutions out there were like hacks to work around it, where you may have to disable some browser security to run a script and inject something, or it was kind of more a Selenium style. But a lot of the hacks were running on the device itself, so on the screen device, the computer powering the screen, which is not really the right place for it to run, because that's the thing you can steal. You can just go up and unplug it and take it away, and then you've basically got a back door into a system there. So we wanted to take all of this up into the cloud and do it as securely as possible in the cloud. But the good thing about the cloud is, in you look at the last 10 years, cloud security has, just excelled, probably to be, I would say, probably the world-class gold standard in security now, compared to, say, on-premise devices and on-premise management. I mean, really, a small team of on-premise IT people versus the cloud security team of Amazon. I mean, it's just not a fair fight. And if it's up in the cloud, you can't physically go and grab it. And there's great, credential management, encryption, and things like that. So we said, well, look, let's run all of this in the cloud as if you were a user, but the user is running in the cloud. So it's acting like a user, but it's actually not a user. And I'm not going to say AI. It's not that, but it's sort of mimicking human behavior in the cloud. And then we as a platform are trying to know as little as possible about what's what's going on inside your business intelligence account. So you do have to give us some credentials. We usually say give us like a specific user just for this, which is locked down user permissions just to read only access, maybe limited to only the dashboards we want to show, that kind of thing. So a lockdown user. We actually don't store that. We store that straight into Amazon's password management encryption. So we just put it straight in there. So we don't know, but it does have to encrypt and decrypt. There's still areas where it could be better, but like that's with security, it could always be better. Like what's better security than a door, a wall? But how do I go through the wall? Well, you need a door. You know what I mean? But there are things that we can do to take this to another level. We can talk about that a bit later. But effectively what it does is it acts like a user would logging in the cloud, using those encrypted credentials. It goes to the dashboard and it takes screenshots. And what we've done is every single customer has their own AWS server, their own server spun up uniquely for them. So they're sandboxed. There's no other customers that they could touch. It's everything stored uniquely there in their own server, dynamically spun up just for their needs. So it's quite expensive for us to run this. It's actually, because running a whole server just to maintain a couple of dashboard screenshots, that's excessive unless you look at it from a security point of view, in which case it's not.
Yeah. So I suppose that kind of leads neatly onto the next question, which is, why bother? Like, I mean, you've already touched on it, but how much of a problem is it for people that, okay, yeah, we've done a bit of a JavaScript hack to disable some of the security features on this device to enable us to show this URL. Why is that a problem for people? And because ultimately that's what we're here to do, right? We're here to solve people problems. We're not here to create the world's best technology stack that everyone goes, oh my God, that's amazing. It's because we can see that the people are hurting and they're like, I've got a real problem here. I need to do this thing and I can't do it in the correct way using what's currently out there.
It's only as much as a problem as it's perceived to be. So there's some data that just isn't that critical and you don't really care if it got out into the wide world that much. So in which case it's not a problem. And I've seen actually some examples talking to customers about it. And I think the good thing is to be open about it. Not everyone will want this. Other people will be like, oh, I could just use the URL one, the random URL. No one's going to guess that. It's fine. It's only showing a few random numbers. Don't mean anything to anyone. Yeah, it's cool. It's cool. And I'm like, go for it. The reality is that almost every company has at least one dashboard that if you said, oh, that's going around the internet as an open URL would make the leadership team sweat and maybe even lose their jobs. And so it's for that. And the thing is, are you going to put your absolute most critical information up on a screen? Probably not. But you're going to put something up there which is a leading indicator as to your performance. So that could be sales, and that's customer data, which has its own, you can't be sharing out customer data. But it could also be, your pipeline, your kind of insights. It could also be showing vulnerabilities. Often dashboards are used in the IT team. And what you want to do is show your threats, vulnerabilities, and things like that. Again, do you really want that out in the wide world of, oh, we've just identified a huge threat. Let's tell the internet.
Let's tell Reddit.
So, and for a public company, these are the kind of things which would actually have impact on market price. So for the cost of, spinning up servers, maybe a little over the top if you look at it from that point of view, versus the cost of what the impact would have if this stuff leaks, then I'd say it's a big problem. But I don't want to suggest that it's a big problem for every single person. It's not. But for quite a lot of people.
And it might be... it was kind of interesting. We got our internal security guy, Paul, to be the customer. Like, what would you do? What questions would you be asking? And it's interesting when you hear from him, like all the sort of, you'd look at that and go, wow, that's really paranoid. But actually, some people are going to face that within organizations. They're as soon as it goes to security and they're saying, right, we want to put dashboards up on a screen. Even if you're saying, but at the moment, it's not going to be that important, the data. someone in security might be saying, yeah, but if in the future you're ever going to use ScreenCloud or any other, device, similar kind of service, and someone wants to show this data, and we haven't got these things in place, then it becomes a problem. So and I suppose that's in some ways the nice thing about what we're saying is like you don't have to use ScreenCloud dashboards if you don't want to, but it's there for you if in the future things start to evolve within the company, the desire to show more and more important data, real-time data to frontline workers, that might become more of a requirement. And actually, if you've got something already in place that can be spun up, that's obviously
well. I think again, it all comes back to surfing waves and placing bets, right? That's how you build billion-dollar businesses. Not that we've done that yet, but we've surfed a wave, and we've got to keep surfing waves. You don't just surf one wave, right, all the way through. And there's a couple of bets that I am more than happy to take about the future when it comes to technology. Firstly, business intelligence and data will become more and more of a thing. And secondly, security will become more and more of a thing, because the attacks and cyber attacks are becoming more prevalent, more frequent, and and a bit more smart. And I don't know many companies who aren't thinking about data to inform their decisions. So I'm pretty comfortable sat on this wave with a big wide surfboard going, I see the beach and I'm going at it. I also like from because we don't want to turn a podcast into a sales pitch about a feature. It's very cool. You should check it out. We've got a big launch event coming soon and you can try it. So all of those good things, please get in touch. But if you look at it sort of from a kind of a business point of view, like a ScreenCloud business point of view, we've been working on this problem for the best part of 2 years. And I'm not talking like one person here. I'm talking collectively probably about 20 people, not full time, but 20 people involved. I mean, right now, I think we have like 6 people involved just in getting the launch, just getting it over the line. Something we started 2 years ago, and we've tried different things, and we've pulled back and tried again, and this is hard. Like putting images and videos on a screen, there's a challenge in that. There's some it's more challenging than it might appear, but this is a whole of a lot more challenging. I mean, this is tough. We've had some very, very smart senior experienced engineers working on this for a long time, and what we're shipping, there's still more to go. Like, as I was kind of alluding to, like, how could we potentially take that credential management, which is probably the bit that everyone's a bit more like, but there's a lot of reasons why it's fine, and it's better than anything else. So it's kind of better than your alternative, but there's still part of you going, I am still giving a third-party credentials, even if they are the lockdown versions and they're going straight to encryption. Yeah. It's still a thing. And what we want to then do is go, well, is there elements of this that we could extract from the cloud that we could run internally in your network that could then actually communicate up to the cloud? So you do 80% of the work which is non-controversial up here in the cloud, and then just do the little bits which are very specific to your login and your dashboard data, and just run that on premise inside your network, where it's only communicating to the cloud and nothing else. And it's doing it from within your network. You can easily shut it down at any time and you're in full control. That would be that's the kind of North Star that we're looking towards in this product, which we actually probably will get there this year. But the roadmap for this product is years and years before you absolutely crack every single thing. And I kind of like, I wish our competitors well in their journey to try and sort this out, because it's really hard.
So I suppose one question then would be, if someone was to come to you, let's say, I kind of feel like I'm interviewing you today, actually. It's quite weird. But if someone was to come to you, a startup-ish company, scale-up company, saying, we are thinking of kind of doing something that's a sort of product improvement that is quite a major investment, quite disruptive. I mean, 4 years ago, we started to rebuild our platform from the ground up. So we're kind of masters at this, if you like. But like, what advice would you say to people, like in terms of working out whether it's worth doing, because it is fucking disruptive. And as you say, we've had lots and lots of people working on this. And secondly, that, you know, how do you kind of do it in a way that you really, really understand that you're solving this problem? How do you make sure that you've got that in the front of your mind, that actually what this is doing is genuinely solving a real problem?
Okay, so there's two quite big things in there. Well, firstly, I mean, you know, without doubt, before you undertake something like this, you have got to be 100% sure this is really what people want. And in the case of dashboards, it was not even. That's a 2-minute conversation, right? You talk to anyone who's been talking in success or sales, or any of the product managers, or anyone who's touched a customer at ScreenCloud in those first few years, dashboards came up constantly, like just constantly. You know, so if I could go up to each of those individuals and say, "Hey, what's the biggest thing we need to work on?" Everyone would be like, "Dashboards." Like it would just be that, and there'll be loads of other things, but everyone would say that first. So for us, it was easy because it was clearly a pull from the market. Now, often these innovations, we actually have another innovation that we've been working on for almost as long, maybe not quite, which has been more of an inferred innovation in ScreenCloud OS, which we can talk about another time, but that's our own operating system for devices and just trying to crack the hardware side of it, which is huge. And that was more identifying gaps in the market and customer pain rather than customers actually requesting it. That's a little bit more of a gamble, that one, which also looks like it has paid off, which is good because, again, the pain was real and very consistent. And then when we saw some moves in the market where Google withdrew this mid-market product because I guess they just weren't making any money out of it and didn't care, that created this real void, which no one else looked like they wanted to fill, which is a void that we didn't really want to fill ourselves either. And that's also an interesting thing. Sometimes you get pulled into stuff you don't even really want to do, but the market needs it so badly you've got to do it. So that would be maybe another little hint I would give at this. But I suppose the obvious answer is validate the hell out of it before you end up doing so much. Then the other part of the question was kind of like how to approach it, I guess. Was that right? It was kind of like basically how to approach doing this.
Yeah.
So I don't think we've done that brilliantly in dashboards. I think there's wasted time in there, which if I was doing it again, I'd do it differently. I think that sometimes with these really technical, there's tension here between you want to bite off big, gnarly technical challenges, which effectively create a bit of a moat, but also, you know, because they're just really hard, and that's kind of what we're here to do is, like you said earlier, solve problems. This is a big problem. But the problem is that often when you try and do that, you end up over-engineering your version 1. Like we're kind of building it as if it is already the big launch thing. And I think the MVP on this stuff is a bit bullshit because the MVP of this is not, well, if you literally go what to MVP means, it's minimum viable product. And actually the raw, it often means associated with like, oh, let's put some scrappy shit out there. But actually, if you go back to it, minimum viable product. The minimum viable product of this dashboards tool is quite a sophisticated product. It's not something you knock out in 2 weeks because it just doesn't, you know, the whole principle of it is that it's secure and scalable and like, it's challenging, but the problem is I think you can still end up over-engineering this and not getting it quickly enough into customers' hands, but still at a sophisticated level. So my advice would be it still needs to be this enterprise level product. The MVP can't be scrappy. You haven't proven it out. But what you might want to do is really limit down that scope and say, initially, we're just going to prove it there and then get that into customers' hands and then go on. And we did that, I think, about 6 months too late.
Okay, interesting. Cool. Okay, well, I think we've
probably hit time.
We could obviously talk about this more. Yeah, there's loads of. Obviously, we'll put some stuff in the show notes if you want to find out more about this or more about the product. And yeah, just you'll be able to see how we've obviously thought long and hard about this, and we're really excited because we can see that it's solving something that people have been asking for a long time for us to solve. And actually, I don't want to go into this too much, but I think of it a bit like the Uber thing and taxis. We had taxis. There were solutions to finding taxis, but it wasn't until Uber came along that you realised actually there was a better solution. So I'm hoping that we've built something that people are going to realise actually, for what we need in terms of the company that we are and the requirements that we have around security, this is a really, really good step in the right direction. And what was coming before was just not really good enough for what we needed it to. And we know that
I'm actually not worried about at all, because we have validated this with customers. And
so people are like saying, this is, people say we've looked, I won't quote who it actually is, but someone's saying we've looked at all of the different vendors out there, and you guys are by far and away solving this in a sensible way, in a way that we can get behind. So that's great.
Wow. This time next year we'll be billionaires because we nailed it.
How many years have we been saying that?
Too long.
18.
Well, everything's slower than the world thinks it is. But,
Yeah. There's a great quote I saw the other day by Bill Gates. I think he said, everyone overestimates what they can do in a year, but underestimates what they can do in 10 years.
Yeah, well, that's certainly true.
That's what he said.
On that nugget.
Awesome. Right.
Bye.
Until next time. Cheers.